said, "We braided the head of her hair into 3 plaits." In another narration, she said, "We braided her hair into 3 plaits and put it toward the back. Who should perform the ghusl for the diseased? The one who has knowledge of the sunnah of the ghusl is the one who should perform the ghusl, especially if he is a relative of the diseased. Those who took on the responsibility of washing the Prophet's body were members of his family. For example, Ali said, "I washed the Messenger of Allah, and I expected to find what one finds among the diseased, but I did not notice a thing. He was in a good state, both alive and dead. Men should wash males, and women should wash females. The exception to this are spouses, as either of them may wash the other." Aisha said, "If I had a chance to do it again, none except the wives of the Prophet would have washed him." Also said, "The Prophet returned and came to me from a funeral at the Al-Baqi cemetery. I had a headache and said, 'Oh, my head.' He replied, 'No, in fact, oh, my head.' And he said, 'What would it harm you if you were to die before me, and I would then wash you, shower you, pray over you, and bury you? It is not sanctioned to wash a martyr who has died on the battlefield.' And the Prophet said, 'Bury them with their blood.' That was on the day of Uhud, and he did not have them washed. The shroud. The conclusion that this is obligatory derives from the order of the Prophet, who said about a pilgrim who died when his animal threw him, 'Wash him with water and lotus leaves, and shroud him in 2 garments.' The shroud, or its price, is to come from the wealth of the deceased, even if he did not leave anything else behind as inheritance. Khabbab ibn al-Arab said, 'We immigrated with the Prophet seeking the pleasure of Allah. Our reward was upon Allah. Some of us passed away without consuming any of his reward in this world. Those included Musab, Umar. On the other hand, some of received our rewards in this life. He, Musab, was killed in the battle of Uhud, and we could find nothing to shroud him with except his cloak. When we pulled it to cover his head, his feet became bare, and when we wanted to cover his feet, his head became bare. Accordingly, the Prophet told us to cover his head with it, and to cover his feet with al-idkhir, a special type of pleasant smelling grass. It is a must that the shroud be a garment that covers all of the body. If all one can find is a shorter garment that cannot cover all of the body, then one covers the head and places some grasses over the feet, as in the hadith of Khabbab. The following are recommended for the shroud, being white in color. The Prophet said, 'Wear of your clothing the white clothing, for it is the best of your clothing. Also, shroud your deceased in it.' The shroud should consist of 3 garments. The Messenger of Allah was shrouded in 3 white Yemenite pieces of cotton cloth from Sahul, a city in Yemen, none of which was an undergarment or a turban. If possible, one of the garments should have a strict pattern that the Prophet said, if one of you dies and it is if it can be found, let him be shrouded in a stripped garment. Prayer for the deceased. The deceased Muslim is a communal obligation, as the Prophet had commanded it in many hadith, that a man from among the companions of the Prophet died on the day of Khaybar. That was mentioned to the Prophet, and he said, pray for your companion. The people expressions changed upon hearing that. The Prophet then said, your companion misappropriated something from the booty. We searched his belonging and found some beads of the Jews that were not even worth 2 dirhams. The exception to the obligation of the prayer is in the following 2 cases. The first is the child who had not reached the age of puberty. Aisha said, Ibrahim, the son of the Prophet, died while he was 18 months old, and the Prophet did not perform the funeral prayer for him. Second is the martyr. Anas said, the martyrs of the Battle of Uhud were not washed but were buried with their blood, and he, the Prophet, did not pray the funeral prayer for them. However, non-obligation does not deny that it is sanctioned for pray for them. The Messenger of Allah was brought one of the children of the Ansar. He prayed the funeral prayer for him. On the day of Uhud, the Messenger of Allah ordered that Hamza be brought, and he covered him in a cloak. Then he prayed for him, saying 9 takbīrs. Then he was brought those who had been killed, and they